In Munich's most elegant cafe, Anna Bergman sat alone in front of a cake with 23 candles that no one would blow out with her. The daughter of industrialist Klaus Bergman, with a fortune of 800 million euros, she was surrounded by luxury, but completely isolated in her quiet world. Deaf since birth, she lived in a universe where her father's money couldn't buy what she wanted most, someone who truly understood her. She was about to leave when a man with a child sat down at the next table. The little girl was restless, and suddenly the man began to calm her down in sign language. When their eyes met, he congratulated Anna on her birthday in perfect German Sign Language. It was Thomas Weber, a widower and single father who had learned sign language out of love. What happened next transformed the loneliest birthday into a moment that would change three lives forever. The amber light of the autumn morning flooded Café Louis on Odeonsplatz and illuminated the lonely figure of Anna Bergman. 23 years old on this October 15th, she sat at her regular table with a cake in front of her that cost as much as an average monthly salary. 3 layers of Belgian chocolate mousse, decorated with edible gold leaf, ordered by her father's secretary with the usual impersonal note. Klaus Bergman had solved this birthday, as he solved everything, with a transfer of $50,000 and a WhatsApp message that Anna read for the 10th time, her fingers stroking the screen as if they could turn the words into something more tangible than pixels on a display. Anna's world consisted of silence, but not the romantic silence that hearing people imagine. It was a dense silence, populated by glances that turned away when she tried to communicate, by embarrassed smiles when she typed her order on her cell phone, by conversations that took place around her as if she were invisible, just because she couldn't hear them. In years, her father had never learned more than a few basic signs of German Sign Language. Hello and I love you, performed with the awkwardness of someone speaking a foreign language that doesn't really interest them. He had preferred to delegate. Specialized caregivers, private tutors, highly paid therapists who did what a father should have done out of love. Her education had been impeccable on paper. Exclusive Swiss boarding school, art history studies at LMU Munich with top grades, a dissertation on visual communication in the Renaissance that had impressed her professor. But none of that had brought her any real connections, only acquaintances who were interested in the name she bore. Women who feigned friendship to gain access to exclusive mining events. Men who saw her as an exotic challenge or worse, as a gateway to her family's textile empire. Her Instagram profile with 30,000 followers told the story of a golden life. Private jets, handbags for 20,000, meals in Michelin-starred restaurants. But no one noticed the sad eyes in the photos, the smile that never reached her eyes, the hands that spoke a language in videos that no one took the time to understand. Wolfgang, the waiter who had been serving her for years, approached with his usual professional smile. He had learned a few basic gestures: coffee, croissant, bill, an effort that Anna appreciated infinitely, even if it was limited. He pointed to the cake and mimed lighting the candles, looking around as if he were expecting someone. Anna shook her head and gestured alone, one of the few gestures Wolfgang understood. She saw the pity in his eyes. That pity she hated more than contempt, because at least contempt was honest. She took the lighter out of her Hermès bag and began methodically lighting the candles. She was about to blow them out when a movement at the next table caught her attention. A man in his 30s had just sat down, a girl of about 5. The child seemed excited, pointing tearfully at something outside. Anna was about to look away, accustomed to ignoring family scenes that were none of her business, when she saw something that took her breath away. The man had started to sign, not improvised or approximate gestures, but real German Sign Language, fluent and natural, as if it were his mother tongue. His hands danced in the air, creating words that Anna could read perfectly, promising the child a trip to the playground after breakfast. The little girl, obviously hearing without hearing aids, responded in the same silent language with small but precise hands despite her age. Anna froze with the burning candle in her hand. Wax dripped onto the perfect cake. She couldn't take her eyes off this silent but lively conversation, this father signing with absolute naturalness, this hearing child responding as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Thomas Weber hadn't planned this morning at Café Louis Polt. Emma had had the nightmares that had plagued her since Lisa's death 2 years ago. woke up calling for her mother, crying when reality hit her. He had rocked her until dawn and sung the lullaby that Lisa always sang. Then he decided to take a day off from the translation agency where he worked as a DGS interpreter. Café Louis Poult had been an impulse, an attempt to recapture the magic that Lisa knew how to find in difficult moments. It was expensive for his finances as a widower with freelance work, but the money from Lisa's life insurance was intended precisely for such emotional emergencies. While he was calming Emma with sign language, a habit that had started when she was a baby and had become their special secret language, he noticed the girl at the next table. First the cake with too many candles to be alone, then the silent tears on her perfectly made-up face, finally the trembling hands holding the lighter. But when she turned around, Thomas understood everything. He immediately recognized that hungry look for communication that he had seen 1,000 times in his years as an interpreter. The girl was deaf and looked at them like a shipwrecked person looking at a ship on the horizon. Without thinking, Thomas turned to her and signed a birthday greeting, adding that no one should blow out candles alone. Anna's reaction was immediate. She almost dropped the lighter. Her hands moved instinctively to respond and ask if he really knew how to sign. The ensuing conversation flowed naturally, like water finding its course. Thomas introduced himself as a professional interpreter. Emma is bilingual from birth. Anna felt her name take shape in her true language for the first time in weeks. Not written or mispronounced, but formed by hands that knew how to give it meaning. Emma stood up with the typical directness of children and approached, asking in perfect sign language why Anna was crying on her birthday. The disarming simplicity of the question and the naturalness with which it was asked broke through all social barriers. Thomas suggested joining them to celebrate, an offer Anna accepted with her first genuine smile in months. Wolfgang, surprised but efficient, helped push the tables together while Emma already climbed onto a chair and studied the cake with professional interest. In the hours that followed, Anna discovered what it meant to communicate without barriers. Thomas told his story about Lisa, the special education teacher who had become his wife. The bilingual home they had created where Emma grew up considering silence as much a part of life as sound. He told of Lisa's last days, when the brain tumor had taken her speech but not her ability to sign, of her last silent but powerful words. Anna found herself sharing her own story as she had never done before. Her mother, who had died in childbirth. Her father, who had solved her deafness as a logistical problem rather than an emotional challenge. The years at boarding school in Switzerland, surrounded by hearing girls. The summers spent in empty villas. The friends who had left her when the exotic appeal of the deaf girl faded in the face of everyday reality. Emma, seemingly absorbed in her drawing on a napkin, suddenly looked up and declared that Anna's father was stupid, because if she couldn't hear, her dad would learn all the ways to talk to her. The childlike candor elicited a liberating laugh from Anna, that unmodulated sound she had learned to suppress, but at that moment she didn't care if it was perfect. When Emma fell asleep on the chair, her head leaning on Anna's arm, who didn't dare move so as not to wake her, Thomas looked at her with something in his eyes that she didn't yet dare to decipher. Before they left, they exchanged numbers with the promise to see each other again. In the weeks that followed, Anna discovered what it meant to really have someone in her life. Thomas and Emma became constant presences, meeting in the English garden where Emma ran while the adults conversed in flowing gestures. Afternoons in Anna's penthouse in Schwabing, where the child explored the luxurious but terribly empty rooms with wonder. The real connection happened in Anna's studio. The room was full of sculptures Anna had created, tactile works meant to be seen with the hands. Emma was immediately fascinated, learning under Anna's patient guidance to read the shapes with her palms, discovering stories that marble and bronze told to those who could listen with their sense of touch. Thomas watched his daughter blossom during those weeks. The nightmares decreased, her smile returned more often, and most importantly, she had begun to invent her bedtime stories in sign language again. These were the stories she used to share with Lisa and had stopped telling after her death. Thomas's modest apartment in Pacing became another refuge for Anna. One evening, while they were preparing dinner together, Emma asked the question that both adults feared and hoped for. With the strict logic of children, she asked if Anna could be her new mom. She observed that Thomas liked Anna. She could see from the way he looked at her that Anna liked Thomas. She could see it from the way she smiled and that they both liked each other. So the conclusion was obvious. The blush that colored the adults' faces was accompanied by a charged silence. They had carefully avoided the growing attraction, hiding it behind friendship and Emma's well-being. Do you like this story? Give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue with the video. Anna replied gently that they could be friends, but that she would always be there for Emma. The child seemed to accept the answer, but added that her mother had told her in her dreams that she wanted her father to be happy again. That night, after putting Emma to bed, they stood on the small balcony and looked out at the lights of Munich. The silence between them did not need to be filled. It was a comfortable silence between two people who understood each other. When Thomas finally expressed his fears of betraying Lisa, hurting Emma if something went wrong, not being good enough for someone from Anna's world, she stopped him by taking his hands. She told him that her life had been empty before, despite everything, that he and Emma had shown her what it meant to truly belong to someone, and that she thought Lisa would be happy to know that her family had found love again. The kiss that followed tasted of new beginnings and silent promises. Emma, who had been spying from the window, finally gave a thumbs up before returning to bed with a satisfied smile. The next day, Anna received the dreaded phone call. Klaus Bergman had returned from Shanghai and wanted to see her, as always at the Bavarian Hof for an awkward dinner where he would check his phone while pretending to be interested in her life. This time, Anna said no. If he wanted to see her, he would have to come to her home, and there were people she wanted to introduce him to. The meeting between Klaus Bergman and Anna's new family was as tense as a violin string. The industrialist entered his daughter's apartment with the confident stride of a man accustomed to owning every room. But he paused when he saw the simply dressed man and the child who, of course, spoke with his hands. The dinner that followed was a disaster of misunderstandings. Klaus spoke to Anna without looking at her, turned to Thomas as if he were a necessary interpreter, not understanding that his daughter could read lips perfectly and didn't need any intermediaries. Emma broke the tension with her characteristic directness. She stood up, walked over to Klaus, and after signing something to him that he didn't understand, she spoke loudly and accused him of being rude for not looking at Anna when he spoke to her. Then she added the devastating question. Didn't he love Anna if he had never learned to talk to her? The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Klaus seemed speechless for the first time in decades. A 5-year-old child had just destroyed his defense with the simple truth. When he finally admitted that he loved his daughter but didn't know how to reach her, Anna replied through Thomas that he had had 23 years to learn and had chosen not to every day. The atmosphere seemed to explode as Klaus stood up to leave, but something held him back. He turned to Thomas and asked if he had learned sign language for his wife. Thomas's answer was simple. He had learned it out of love and to build bridges. Anna had lived on an island for 23 years, waiting for someone to build that bridge. Emma explained that the three of them were the bridge. They were a family. Klaus looked at his daughter, really saw her for the first time, saw the happiness in her eyes as she interacted with this strange little family, saw her hands dancing freely as she signed. With an emotion-broken voice, Klaus asked if he could learn, if it wasn't too late. Anna studied him for a long time before replying that it was never too late to start truly loving someone. Klaus's offer to pay any amount for lessons was declined by Thomas, who agreed to help, not for money, but for Anna. Dinner continued. Klaus tried his first awkward gestures under his daughter's patient guidance. Before he left, he did something unexpected. He took off his Patek Philippe watch, worth $100,000, and offered it as payment for the lessons. Emma looked at him seriously and said she didn't want his watch. She wanted him to come and learn every week and bring ice cream. For the first time in years, Anna heard her father really laugh. The following months brought changes that no one could have foreseen. Klaus Bergman, the businessman who never had time for anything but the company, showed up punctually every Saturday for his DGS lessons. Emma proved to be a strict but effective teacher, mercilessly correcting Grandpa Klaus's mistakes but rewarding him with hugs when he made progress. Meanwhile, Anna began to realize her dream of opening a completely barrier-free art gallery with video tours in DJS, tactile installations, and a design that prioritized the visual and tactile experience over the auditory. Thomas helped her with educational programs, while Klaus provided financial support for the first time without interfering in decisions. The gallery opened with an event that made headlines, a completely silent vernissage where hearing visitors were also invited to experience art, through other senses. The success was immediate and unexpected, with bookings for DGS tours stretching out for months. The relationship between Anna and Thomas deepened with the caution of those who had already suffered, but also with the certainty of those who had found something rare. They had moved in together and turned Anna's cold penthouse into a real home. Emma's drawings decorated the refrigerator. Thomas's books shared the shelves with art books. One corner of the living room had become a permanent play area. Emma had lost her nightmares. Not completely, but enough to sleep through the night. Enough to no longer wake up screaming for Mama, but sometimes to talk to her quietly in her dreams. She had begun to affectionately call Anna, not Mama. That was reserved for Lisa, but it was just as special. One afternoon, while Klaus was struggling with a particularly complex conversation in sign language, he made a surprising confession. He said that when Anna was born deaf, the doctors had told him that they could fix the problem with cochlear implants and intensive therapy. He had decided to respect his daughter's condition, but had never considered that this meant entering her world instead of waiting for her to adapt to his. Her response was a long hug, the first real one they had shared since she was a child. No words, signed or spoken, were needed to communicate the forgiveness and understanding that passed between them in that moment. The deaf community in Munich, initially skeptical of the gallery of the rich, began to visit and discovered that Anna was not playing the benefactor, but was truly creating a space where deaf culture was celebrated, not medicalized or pitied. A year after that first encounter at Café Louis Poult, Anna's apartment once again hosted a birthday party, but this time the cake had 24 candles and many hands ready to blow them out together. The room was filled with an unlikely mix of people. Members of the deaf community who had become true friends, Wolfgang the waiter, who had taken DGSU lessons and could now really converse. Some of Thomas's colleagues and, of course, Klaus, who could now hold basic but determined conversations in sign language. Klaus stood up for what everyone thought was a speech, then paused and did it in sign language, slowly and imprecisely, but understandably. He asked for forgiveness for all the years of silence, thanked Thomas and Emma for teaching him to really talk to his daughter. Emma, now 6 years old and with a gap in her front teeth, applauded enthusiastically and explained that Grandpa Klaus was improving and had signed the whole story of Little Red Riding Hood with only a few mistakes the day before. Thomas took Anna's hand under the table. They had been living together for 6 months, taking their time out of respect for Lisa and Emma's pace. They weren't married yet, but Emma had already planned everything. It would be in the spring. Everyone would sign during the ceremony. There would be silent fireworks, which she called dancing lights. Anna's gallery had become a recognized cultural institution with educational programs coordinated by Thomas that combined art and sign language. Klaus had invested, but as a silent partner who finally understood that his daughter didn't need to be saved, just seen and respected for who she was. As they cut the cake, Emma made her big announcement. She had decided that when she grew up, she would teach sign language to all the dads who didn't know how to talk to their kids. Klaus laughed and admitted that she would have a lot of work to do, and Emma replied seriously that she would have to start right away and asked Anna if she could teach at the gallery. Later that evening, as they put Emma to bed in her new room in the penthouse that had been converted into a home, the child signed something that moved both adults. She said that Mama visited her in her dreams and was happy that Papa had found someone who understood the language of the heart, that Anna was the gift that was waiting for her. Thomas and Anna looked at each other over Emma's head. They didn't need sign language to communicate what they were feeling at that moment. Sometimes silence says more than 1,000 words when it is a shared, understood, loved silence. While Munich slept outside the windows, 3 pairs of hands signed, "Good night and I love you in the dark," creating words of light that only they could see, but which filled the universe with meaning. Anna's life was still quiet, but no longer empty. It was full of dancing hands, smiles that needed no sound, a family she had chosen, just as they had chosen her. Klaus Bergman's wealth had bought many things in her life, but it was the hands of a widowed interpreter and his daughter that had given her the one thing money couldn't buy. A voice that everyone could understand and someone who really wanted to hear her. The circle had closed, from a lonely birthday to an extended family, from the silence of isolation to the silence of understanding, from empty wealth to the fullness of love. Anna had learned that it is not silence that isolates, but indifference, and that it is not words that unite, but the will to understand each other. And in a world full of noise, it was her quiet conversations that said the most important things. Like, if you believe that love doesn't need words to be real, comment if you know or want to learn sign language. Share to raise awareness about inclusion and communication. Subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and break down barriers. Because in the end, it is not silence that isolates, but indifference. And it is not words that unite, but the will to understand each other. In a world full of noise, it is sometimes the quiet conversations that say the most important things.